Thank you for that, Patrick and Lou. That was great. Up next, we have Why Not AI. So AI is regularly referenced as the technology that will transform everything, from how we work to how we relax. Our next speaker is a bit more skeptical and has chosen to not focus quite as much on AI. So here to tell us why he is not investing in AI, in conversation with Yamilette Cano, please welcome to the stage from Monks Hill Ventures, Peng T.
Hello, welcome to Venture, Peng. How are you today?
Thanks. I'm doing fine.
Well, as you all know, or maybe you may not, Peng's background is in AI, and we are here to listen. Why is he not investing in AI today? I want to know your background in AI, and you have a different take on this.
Yeah. So, where to start? Just for background, I was working in AI companies like before the big collapse. Big what they call the nuclear winter of AI. And one thing I learned, and you learn it over again when you start companies and you invest in companies, etc., is what's important is not the technology. What is important is the value you're creating. So all this hype about AI has happened before, decades ago. I'm not a young person. I've been through a lot, and and you see people get really keen on the technology. Last year was a good example, right? Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, all that. Everyone's keen on it. But the question is, what value are you creating, right? And that's the question I always ask now. Even though I'm an engineer, even though I can get really deep in the technology, I step back and I ask myself, what value are you creating? If you're not creating value, I'm not going to invest in it, right? This is a very simple question. And I think we get too mesmerized by the shiny lights and the blinking cats and dogs that the AIs are picking out, and we forget what value are you creating. So that's the basic question. And it's not that I don't invest in AI. I have companies that use AI left and right. I can go one after another. In fact, the last company that got a second round from my fund was done by Google Gradient, which is their AI fund, right? But I didn't invest in Elsa because of their AI. I invested in Elsa because they could help people learn standard American English, right? How to speak standard American English using an AI.
So you're saying we shouldn't fall for the hype and look into the deep value and what it's going to give to the customer experience. So you're still excited about AI?
I'm an AI person, so I think it's going to change the world fundamentally. But when I invest, I'm not going, show me the AI tech, and I'm going to invest because you have the AI tech, right? Because, for you, those of you who are computer science, folks, it's like saying, okay, I'm very interested in good sorting algorithms. Let me invest in a sorting algorithm. The conversation goes sideways pretty quickly if you speak like that, right? But for some reason, AI has this magic, and people go, oh, AI, so it must be something special. Well, it's another software algorithm, right? And you need to understand what it does for you and how you use it to create value for lots of people. And I think, I guess to be cliche about it, deep value, not deep tech, right? Focus on the deep value.
So do you have an example of AI technology that you still put your money in because it's exciting and has this deep value?
Yeah, so the one example I gave was Elsa, which is it's an app that you speak into, and it figures out your deviation from standard American English, transatlantic American, right? And the UK folks, sorry, that's what they teach because the founder's based in England, based in the US. So if you don't know this, in Southeast Asia, I focus on Southeast Asian market, your salary, your base salary, on average goes up by 50 to 100% if you can speak English, right? If you can speak proper English, communicate in English. So we're helping literally thousands of folks uplift their income just because they can communicate properly in English, right? And the history of Vu Van, she's the founder of ELSA, is very, very interesting. She's a Vietnamese kid, um, did well in school there, well enough to get into Stanford GSB in California. And she went there and she thought she knew English, right? She was speaking to everyone. Everyone was going very politely nodding and not understanding what she was saying. And very quickly she figured this out and she worked very, very hard to get her English up to a certain level. And she realized this was a huge problem for a lot of people. So she got together with some AI folks, and specifically they took a speech recognition system and they tweaked it to measure the delta between standard English and standard American English and what you were saying. And they'll present it to you. Say this way instead of that way. And over time, if you keep using the system, your English actually does improve. I mean, if you look at the rating of ELSA online, it's like it's up at 4.6, 4.8 on the Android store, right, the Play Store. So this piece of technology is AI, but I didn't invest in it. I invested in the fact that this technology, and it's not just AI, it's the training sets, it's the databases, the user interface, it's how the pedagogical approach to teaching English on a computer, on a cell phone. All that together combined gives you the value of uplifting your salary, right? So that's what I invested in. I got more examples,
Yeah,
headhunting
please tell us.
companies. We just closed a deal on a headhunting company, and they have AI internally that help to match jobs and job postings and employees, right? And the average headhunter is about twice as productive as the average headhunter in the marketplace, right? And their goal is to keep improving that because they're going to train their data using data to train their algorithms over and over again to improve it to 2 times, 3 times, 4 times more effective. So you're going to get happier employees. You're going to get, less travel time to your work, etc., better pay, etc., because of the system. And the system is not just the AI; it's everything around it, right? So to invest in AI misses the point of the value you need to create with AI. You can find totally useless AI programs. There are AI programs that distinguishes cats from dogs. Okay, what is that worth, right? I think I can tell the difference between a cat and a dog. So I think that's how I think about the world. It's not that AI is irrelevant. It's when we get caught up with these all these hypes that are especially around technology, around cool technology, blockchains, AI. It used to be VR, AR. We forget why are we doing these things, right? And it's the value.
Do you think that other investors and companies are also not falling into this hype? They have similar ideologies like yours? Do you see a trend?
Yeah, I mean, when you say investors, it's like saying people. Well, there are all kinds of investors, and of course, there are some that run with the hype, right? Otherwise, you won't see, I think in the last 2-3 years, $280 million, sorry, not million, $1 billion invested in AI and AI-related companies, right? So obviously, there's a group of people that you just slap an AI. We had this joke last year, right? Slap Bitcoin and AI onto your business plan, and suddenly you've got more money than you know what to do with, right? And if the investors weren't following these hypes, right, that won't have happened. Right? It's very simple. So some of us in the investing community obviously do, right? But I guess that's the way the world works. You overspend on something, people learn, and then you don't do that in the future. But they forget after about 20 years.
Aside from the deep value you just mentioned, is there anything else you specifically see when you are making an investment?
Yeah. So if we move a little bit away from the AI issue, right? The one thing that creates value in companies, not just tech companies, but tech companies included, is the entrepreneur. we've invested in companies. I've been part of teams that are worth, literally tens of billions of dollars market cap, right? Exits at very, very high valuations. And you look back and you go, what was the key factor there? And typically it's one or two people, right? It's not even team. If those two, if that one person was the wrong person, they won't have built the team that could get them the success. So that's the number one thing I look for. It's not deep value, it's deep competence, and it's deep passion. It's people who do or die, they will accomplish the mission. They're smart enough to do it. They're aggressive enough to do it. They have the guts to go do it. And it's not even a team. It's that one person that will build a team that will accomplish the mission. And then that's what's so hard in our business. It's very, very hard to find that one person. If you have that one person, they'll also figure out the value. They'll also figure out the deep value.
So among your investments, and maybe you have some mentees, do you have these type of people that come to you and they're just focused on the technology, and then you see another one with a passion, but it's lacking the technology?
Oh, and I marry them up?
Yeah, would you choose one or the other, or?
Yeah, it's both. I think most entrepreneurs we invest in have enough brains that they know what they don't understand, and they'll find the people that they need to do those things, right? You can't possibly know everything. The great software engineer won't know marketing. They won't know fundraising. They don't know sales. They need to find people to do that. The great concept person might not understand how to do the technology to build the thing they need, the product they need to sell. So it's always, in the end, a team that makes it happen, but it's the leader that puts the team together.
So I want to go a little bit back to your roots when you started in AI, and how was the transition from you saying, okay, I really need to go and look for this deep value? How you transition from just focusing in the AI for so many years to this new approach?
Yeah. My first company was a pure tech company. We built an expert system kernel that ran on specialized machines and actually also generic machines, even PCs and all that. And so we sold this thing that actually by itself didn't do anything. NASA bought that and built an expert system which controlled the launches of the rockets. And there's another company that used it, Monsanto actually, that used it to control manufacturing processes, etc. So we found that this was not a very easy thing to do because most of the value that was created was not created by us. It was created by the customer solving their problem, right? So we have to work with them very, very closely. It's a very time-intensive process to create the value for the systems. And you'll be surprised some of the very valuable lessons they learned was not expert systems programming, was not any complicated algorithms. It was like, I remember at one of the control plants I was visiting, they had all these control levers. They had to pull to start, pull to stop, pull to do a bunch of things. And they will always screw up the production line because some guy pulled the wrong thing. And so they went to the nearest pub and they got the Anheuser-Busch stick and they got the Coors stick and they got another stick, and then they fixed the problem. No one pulled the wrong lever. So millions of dollars of production capability was fixed by putting in beers levers onto the control sticks, right? It's things like that that you don't think about when you think about high tech, right? But practically, high tech is only valuable if you can get it to do simple things like that very, very well.
I want to know if you have any other stories that you want to share, because it's AI. It's always going to be very interesting for all of us, and we are not all of us very versed. So give us an anecdote that you think it's memorable for you.
Uh-oh. I didn't think about this one. So I'll tell you the most. This has got to do with again creating value. I was at Jensen, which is one of the earlier AI companies. MIT Labs folks started it, and we did a lot of things, right? Part of NASA, part of whole bunch of stuff, and but what really the one lesson that stuck in my mind is this customer was trying to get a production line up and running, and there was a bug in our software, and we had to fix it. And at that time, you didn't deliver huge chunks of software through the internet. The internet was pretty slow during that time. So, like I said, I'm not a young kid. So you have to ship it, right? You have to cut the software on the tape and ship the tape. And basically, we were working all day to fix it, and by the time we fixed it was at night. And that you couldn't even FedEx it because FedEx doesn't pick it up at night. So we had to stay up all night getting everything ready, and then ended up with the tape. And I had to drive the tape to the airport to hand it to the plane, like at 4 a.m. Right? That taught me a very, very basic lesson about getting things done. It's not about how smart you are. Are you willing to push the limit, to wake up at 4 a.m. to go drive a tape to the airport so the customer can launch their production line in time the next day. It's about, again, this lesson was about creating value and what it takes entrepreneurs to create value. Right? And I can still remember that day, today, right? And it's kind of stupid if you think about it, right? All night doing software and then driving it to the airport, but that's what it took, right? And I look for entrepreneurs with that kind of mindset about creating value for their customers.
You're talking about entrepreneurs, and we were just chatting about this backstage. You're based in Jakarta now,
Yes,
and before you were in the U.S.
Yeah,
Do you
before
see
that,
a big
Beijing.
difference in these different cities and countries that you have lived in?
Yeah. So U.S. and China and Beijing were I was in California, Silicon Valley area, and then Beijing. That was the biggest transition, right? This day and night is developed country to emerging market. This Beijing like 10 years ago, right? Not today. Traffic's about the same, but it's a very different city. So Beijing to Jakarta is actually not that different in some ways. In some ways, it's a bit of a relief because the traffic, and those of you who know Jakarta, you might laugh at me, but the traffic in Jakarta is actually much better than Beijing. Jakarta is known for not being able to get around in a timely fashion because of the traffic. The difference is more cultural. It's more habits. Surprisingly, because I grew up in Singapore, I'm actually probably more at home in Jakarta than in Beijing. Right? So my cultural roots are more Southeast Asian than Chinese from that perspective. The needs of the folks. So Indonesia is about 3,800, 4,000 GDP per capita. That was what China was about 10, 15 years ago, right? And the needs very, very similar, right? So you see all these things that's happened in China happening now in Southeast Asia, with the added advantage of the fact that the technology capabilities with AI and all that stuff is much better.
So your entrepreneurs in Jakarta are very eager to go out in the world and try new technologies?
Yeah. That's a process that my fund calls, we're a bunch of geeks, so we use technical terms. The technification of service verticals in Southeast Asia. What's happening now is all these service verticals is about $1.5 trillion worth of GDP in services in Southeast Asia. All that stuff is using pen, paper, trucks, physical things, very emerging markets, right? All that stuff, one by one, every one of these verticals is being digitized, right? And the productivity improvement is not like 20%. It's like 3x, 5x, right? When you're 5x more efficient than your competitor, you'll win, right? So that's what's happening with tech companies. In retail, the e-commerce companies are in the billions of dollars of valuation now. Transportation, you guys know Gojek, Grab, it's all there, right? But logistics, well, pretty soon you're going to see the billion-dollar companies there. You know, recruiting, healthcare, education, so on. So we're technifying the entire Southeast Asian economy, one by one. And by the way, if you look at China, it's more or less happened, right? The pole position of every services company, every services vertical in China is now a tech company, right? Financial services, logistics, anything. It's a tech company, right? And that's what's happening in Southeast Asia. That's what makes it so interesting.
So how do you see the future of AI and the tech ecosystem? Is it going to go with this hype continuously, or are we still going to see the deep value that you are preaching?
The good news for emerging markets is, you know, you can hype as much as you want, but the people on the ground are very practical. Can you lower my interest rates, you know, by 50%? Can you make the availability of the produce I'm ordering more guaranteed? You know, just basic problems of life, right? And if you don't solve those problems, they'll smile at you politely and have you on your way, right? So the folks that we work with understand this. They create value for these guys. A lot of them with AI, but they don't talk about the AI. It's just insight, just like sorting algorithms, just like, you know, anything else you use in tech, right? You know, you don't have lots of conversation about tech stack you're using LAMP or anything like that. You know, JavaScript, you know, but for some reason people want to talk about AI, so we talk about AI.
And a little controversial question, talking about AI, do you think they're going to take over a lot of the working force in a near future?
That's a tough one. So it's not like super intelligence, Terminator, like Skynet, like AI that I'm worried about, right? I'm worried about the AI that over time, the next 10, 20 years, you know, will start taking over what we do, right? Most of us don't do super hard things, most human beings, and machines can replace us, right? It's sort of different way of looking at it. We in the tech industry improve the productivity of the world, right? We make things more efficient. So the question is, what if we succeed? And everything is very efficient. So efficient until we don't need human beings, right? That's the direction it's going, right? And right now we're just looking at this low level of the inflection point, but we'll start doing this and we'll start getting 10, 20, 30% unemployability, right? Not unemployment, but unemployability, right? Simply because everything you know how to do, the machines can do it better, cheaper, faster, right? So what happens to the world? What happens when the fundamental ability to redistribute wealth, i.e. the value of labor, goes to zero for a lot of people, right? So think about it, right? We are mostly a capitalist system. We redistribute wealth because labor has value, right? I didn't mean to get in so deep into this, but what if the value of the labor goes towards zero over time? What happens?
I think that's a great question to leave for everybody here in the audience. Our time is up. We really want to thank you, Peng, and continue enjoying and think about that question.
Thank you.